President Trump will hold a National Security Council meeting in just a few hours, while the nuclear talks originally planned for Sunday are now in limbo. Former Assistant Secretary of State and Maine gubernatorial candidate Robert Charles joins me now. And let's pick up there with those Sunday nuclear talks with Iran. Is there any way they happen now?
I doubt it, Todd. You know, I've spent many hours in the National Security Council, and I'll just say this. Really what we're looking at right now is a combination of a strategic error on the part of Iran, because at the end of the day, they should not have turned away from President Trump's offer to negotiate out the nuclear deal that they could have had with him. Instead, they redoubled. They doubled down. They took the amount of enriched uranium that they had, which was at 60%, and they doubled that. In other words, they kind of threw back at him. So, look, President Trump and Israel are locked up together. That was a strategic error. Their second big error was strategic. I'll call it strategic forgetting. 45 years ago, almost exactly, Ronald Reagan told them that they needed to hand the hostages back. Same regime, different people, needed to hand the hostages back or they would pay a mighty consequence. They immediately handed them back. That same message was essentially delivered through Trump and with Israel, and they ignored it. And I guess I'll say there's a little bit of strategic remembering going on here, Todd. If you go back to 1935, there's an awful lot of people who say that if the West had only remembered, had only recognized that if they were able to deter the buildup by Hitler, we would never have faced consequences that became World War II. What Israel is doing right now with U.S. full buy-in is to say we're not going to have a World War III. We're going to literally get rid of this now. We're going to preempt it, and that amounts to essentially remembering our better Churchill and our better Reagan, and not falling victim to the idea that you can appease this kind of a terror group indefinitely. You can't.
A la Neville Chamberlain. We don't want Neville Chamberlain's name coming up in this discussion. I want to focus on the National Security Council meeting that's about to happen in just a few hours. You have been inside high-level meetings like this following a major event like we saw last night. How do our leaders craft a response? What should the approach of the Trump administration be?
Well, you know, what you always want to do is bring something to closure, and you have to have the right pressure. So if you think about it, in many ways, this is like looking at how, well, the Hanoi bombings in '72 brought an end to the Vietnam War. What you're trying to do here is to get Iran, what's left of their leadership, to make the right choices. So far, you don't see Israel hitting the mullahs because they are going to be the ones that negotiate out of this. And I think ultimately what you do is you try to get an end game that is very similar to the end game we had in Libya back when I was in government, and we were able to get Libya to disgorge their nuclear, all their nuclear material and be done with it. But you know what's left here is going to be, this is going to be a battle of attrition until whatever's left in Iran says, in terms of leadership, no, we're not going to keep going after Israel again and again. Look, the ideology, all your other guests today were exactly right. The ideology has been to destroy the Israel and the United States, the lesser and the greater Satans in their world. But at the end of the day, this is a terrorist group, Todd, a terrorist group in the form of a sponsor state. And they made their first strategic error in a long time, and a big one on October 7. They made their most recent one by ignoring President Trump's offer for peace. And I think they're going to eventually have to come back for that.
Robert, although other Mideast nations may be coming out and condemning these strikes this morning, are they secretly celebrating in light of how destabilizing Iran has been to the region?
Yes. There's no question that Shia Iran, which is a sponsor of terror and has been really utterly unforgiving in the way that they've promoted terror, has also presented a direct threat to Saudi Arabia and all of the other countries in the region. So I think they're ultimately happy this is happening.
Robert Charles, thank you so much for your insight on this important morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.